Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a big thank you to Josh Bucher for sending in some awesome pictures of his 88th Cadians. Really like this classic Cadian colour scheme. I always say a well done classic Cadian paint job will always look really good. It's a bit like a well done ultramarine paint job. They might be the poster boys, but when done properly, they look damn good. And it's the same with the Cadian. So thank you for sending these pictures in, Josh. Look absolutely fantastic. Really like the work on the tanks as well. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page or email them in to me. And there will be links and email addresses down in the description below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. And what I want to talk about, guys, is the most common, the biggest, the number one mistake that I see new Imperial Guard commanders making. I'm not talking about rules mistakes or painting mistakes or anything like that. I'm just talking about a fundamental tactical mistake, strategic mistake that I see new Guard commanders making. Now, this is not just something that I see in new players. This is something that I see in maybe old veterans or even some of the more well-known YouTube battle reporters who are very experienced in Warhammer. But there's a common mistake that people always seem to make when they're getting started with their Imperial Guard, and often it can cause them to lose many games. And more so than ever do I see this mistake being a huge problem in 9th edition. It's even worse in 9th edition. And what's really, and I will get into it in a moment, I know I'm doing a lot of preamble, guys, but it's really interesting because I've seen people down at the club who are brand new, who are getting into it, and they make the mistake, and I've seen people on in Games Workshop, and I've seen experienced players, like I said, who have come over from other armies like Marines, coming over to Guard and really struggling with the faction. And it's this sort of common mistake that I see. And I actually was watching the Tabletop Tactics Battle Report. It was in their on-demand section, and it's the latest one, and it's Imperial Guard versus Death Guard. And I saw the list, and I won't get into it too much because obviously that's premium content, and they want people to go and watch it. So go and watch it, guys. And I was the list that was being used. Okay, we will get into the mistake in a moment, but I'm going to set it up right. The list that was being used was on paper, a really strong list. Okay? And if you showed that list in a forum, a lot of people would say, yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good list. And the broad strokes of it were, guys, is that there was some tank commanders, and there was a full payload manticore, and some hellhounds, and some basilisks, and mortar heavy weapon teams. Those 2 or 3 of each of these options. So lots of indirect fire to be able to target out of line of sight. Big guns that can do multiple damage, which against Death Guard you either need to kind of sort of overwhelm the new disgusting resilient rule, or do loads of 1 damage to them. And then there was a decent amount of infantry. There was 60 infantry in that list. And it lost hard. Okay, so that is a spoiler, fair enough. But still, go and check the video out, it's very good. And it lost really hard. If you don't want to know the exact details, please stop watching the video now, because I'm going to tell you now how badly it lost. So 3, 2, 1, here it comes. It gave up bottom of turn 3. So it barely got through halfway through the game before it was the Guard had no way of coming back. And it was all down to this fundamental mistake. Okay. And this is, so we've had this preamble. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, me building it up. Now I'm gonna drop it. Letting the bass drop, okay? They only had 1 punch. 1 wave. Okay? Now what do I mean by that? So the Guard commander, he had 60 infantry, and body glory going off over infantry again. No. Listen, it's not just about the infantry here, okay? The Guard Commander had two lines essentially, and he had his Hellhounds and Tank Commander and Infantry in the first line, but then behind that, way at the back, were all like the mortars and the artillery and the basilisks and the manticores and all that kind of stuff. And the problem was that there was not enough. There was too many. There's two ways to look at it. There's almost too many points put into fire support, or there wasn't really enough points put on aggression. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see Guard Commanders make. They get seduced by the big guns. They get seduced by the fire support of the Guard. And everywhere they go, people tell them, oh yeah, the Imperial Guard, it's all about the tanks. Oh yeah, the Imperial Guard, it's all about the artillery. It's all about the big guns. It's like, no, that is wrong. The Imperial Guard is all about grinding attrition. But more importantly, in terms of games terms, it's all about being able to push and absorb casualties and continue pushing. That's what allows Guard to win on the offensive on the tabletop. And you have to be on the offensive in 40k. Very few Guard are not one of those armies that can sit back, no matter the edition. Okay, very few times has any army, especially Guard, been able to sit back and just castle and shoot and then move out and grab objectives at the end. And the reason why Guard always struggle is because we don't have as much maneuverability as other armies. We do have Guards who can move, and I appreciate that, guys, but we don't have like jetpack or jump back infantry and this kind of stuff. Okay, we're not as maneuverable as other armies. And no matter the edition I've seen people playing, Guard players who are starting out always go with loads and loads of fire support and not enough aggressive, attacking units that have the ability to push forward. So what happened in this game, what I've seen happen in, I do not exaggerate, hundreds of games on YouTube and in real life, is the Guard player's offensive runs out of steam, and there are a bunch of heavy support weapons that are either sat in the backfield, pounding away, but not, killing stuff, but not really taking any objectives or scoring any points. Or there's a bunch of unprotected, by turn 2, turn 3, there's a bunch of unprotected fire support units which are easy pickings for the enemy once they break through. So, what this means, how do you overcome this? Okay, well, what's important is, it's important, we hear this term screening. Okay, screening, I'll say, you want to screen your stuff, you do, but it's important to have 3 layers as Guard, okay? You want to have 2 lines of attack, 2 waves of attack, and 1 wave of fire support, okay? Because what's going to happen is the first wave of attack, whether it be infantry, or whether it be chimeras, or whether it be hellhounds, or sentinels, or anything, this tactic applies to all Guard armies. I'm not looking at this from a pure infantry perspective. Okay, doing it with pure infantry has drilled it into me, because you have to do it this way, but I do the same thing with my Steel Legion. Okay, when they're all mech'd up, I only have 60 infantry in that army. Okay, what you have to accept is the first line of guys that you put out, no matter what it is, be it infantry or hellhounds or whatever, or chimeras, that first line is going to die. Okay, now it's not going to necessarily die turn 1. It's not going to get blown away in 1 turn. You might lose, half of it turn 1 kind of thing. But that first line is going to be dead by the end of the game. All of it. Now, if that first line is all you have for taking the middle of the board, especially in 9th edition, we will keep this on point in 9th edition. If that first line is all you have dedicated in your list, all you have dedicated in your plan before you even hit the battlefield of these guys are going to move and take objectives. This line of dudes, this wave of tanks, this wave of hellhounds or chimeras, it's going to move and take objectives. If that's the only line in your army which is doing that, you will lose. Because you will push forward, your first line will die, it'll do damage to the enemy, but it will die, the enemy will they will overwhelm it because they're superior. Unit for unit, they are superior. And then you will not be able to push and take it, and not be able to push them back off. Okay. You'll just be left with a bunch of fire support not doing anything. So how do you overcome this? Your first line is going to die. It's very important that you have a second wave, a follow-up wave, a 1-2 punch. You've got to hit them with the left, hit them with the right, and the fire support is when the referee's not looking, you kick him in the gonads. Okay, you kick him in the nadges. That's how you have to run your guard. The 3-line tactic. That's the golden rule. I have used this golden rule since 6th edition, since I started going to tournaments. Okay, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th edition, this tactic just works. It is edition proof. Okay, the first line is going to die, but the second line, but they'll take the middle of the board, but the second line will be your counter-attack, will be your second wave, will push forward. And they will be able to push the enemy off the middle of objectives once they've spent themselves on the first wave. And the second wave is going to come in, and between the fire support units and the second wave, you'll push the enemy off and you'll hold the middle, and you might hold on by the skin of your teeth, but you'll do it. And you'll win games, or you'll at least score highly and go down swinging. Because, you know, 40k is unbalanced. There will be some matchups where you just lose. Okay. Now, why... Now, bringing it round, just, you know, classic Mordian glory slant, you know, let's look at this from sort of an infantry guard perspective just for a moment. The reason why, in my opinion, you know what? No, I hate saying in my opinion. It's a get out of jail free card. It's a cop-out. The reason why, and I'm stating this as a solid, cold, hard fact, that pure infantry guard was doing so well at the beginning of 9th edition was because it forced people into doing the 3-line tactic. It forced them. Because of how many infantry you're thrown on the board, you can't only have 2 lines. With the smaller boards and the massive amount of infantry, you're looking at 240 dudes, you were almost forced to deploy into 3 waves. You were almost forced to do that. And your first wave would smash in and then die, and your second wave would smash. And, you know, when I'm using my pure infantry guard, it's 1, 2, 3 waves of offensive. I don't even have really defensive units. Everything pushes forward. Turns 1, turns, you know, wave 1, wave 2, and then if it's looking like wave 2 is going to struggle, wave 3 just following them up, just following them up. It only takes me 1 turn and a move to just get my third wave up into the board if I need to. And that's why Pure Infantry Guard was doing so well, because it was wave after wave, crashing into the middle of the board, taking objectives, fighting in the big brawl, rapid firing, lance gunning, and it worked. Okay, so that's why Pure Infantry, even with the nerfs, with the points, and with the changes to bring to big game, bring it down with the secondary objective, even with those changes, Pure Infantry Guard is still very likely. Well, I'm not saying it's the most competitive anymore. I think we've got options now with Met Guard. But it's still, at the very least, it's up top there with what guard, you know, with competitive guard tactics. Now, if we move away from pure infantry and we're looking at mechanized or a hybrid force, okay, yeah, that's because not every guard player is going to run out there and get 200 plus infantry. I know, heresy, but they're not going to want to. So imagine you're doing this firstly with a hybrid force. Okay, well, let's say even in your hybrid force, guys, you want, you know, 80 infantry minimum. Really, you know, ideally you want like 100 to 120, but you know what? Let's go with 80. 60, I don't think 60 is enough. Okay, I think 80 would be enough. Okay, now how you do this is you'd have 40 men in the first wave, supported by things like double flamer hellhounds. Double flamer hellhounds is fine, but also double heavy flamer chimeras. You know, those units are going to push up. The hellhounds can move and flame, and the guardsmen can move and advance, and then you could use forwards for the emperor, so you can still get some shots off, or you could move. But you don't want to go too fast. If you get too close to the enemy, it will just invite the enemy to push you off in close combat. So move forward and you flame some stuff, and that's your first wave. It's things like hellhounds, things which if the enemy tag in combat, they don't mind, they'll just keep burning away. Same with double flame heavy chimeras. Same with things like sentinels and heavy flamers. You're looking at, You know, the guard squads are going to want things like flamers and melters, and the things that are pushing up in the first wave are going to want to have things like flamers and melters. You know, they're going to be pushing up aggressively. The second wave wants to be made up of similar units, but I would say behind in the second wave, you want things like, you know, your demolisher tanks and your next 40 infantry. So if you're imagining this list of like, you know, a couple of hellhounds and some, you know, and some sentinels and a chimera or something, plus 40 infantry, they're going to push forward in the first wave, and the second wave following them up behind will be another 40 infantry with a couple of tank commanders with demolisher cannons, still relatively short range weapons, but not as short range as the flamer boys, because they'll be in the second wave. So turn one, they want to be moving forward, but they also want to be able to keep firing. You don't want them out of range. If you have your first and second wave with just flamers, wave two won't be able to shoot very much in turn one. So that's what's important. So you have your close range stuff, then your medium range stuff, and then at the back you want your things like your mortar teams and your any tanks which you've given longer range weapons like battle cannons, or that's where your full payload manticores would be. And you have maybe one infantry squad just sort of sat on an objective, just on your home objective, just your bit of obsec in the backfield just to be safe. But you're pushing forward with 40 infantry and some flamers in the first wave, and then 40 infantry and the heavy tanks in the second wave. And you can imagine, you know, imagine those of you who are going to go and watch the Tabletop Tactics Battle Report. You can imagine the Death Guard in the first wave. They brutalise that guard first wave, but following up behind it, it's another wave of infantry, a solid. With tank support, you know, second wave. So even if you kill the first wave, the second wave, you've got to try and deal with the same again, but with less forces. And you'll win that second wave. At the very least, you'll have a fighting chance. So that is the number one mistake that I see people taking. They see people making. They just have that one wave. They don't put enough into it. They think it. They just see it as like a screening to protect the big guns, and that's the big mistake. No, you want to be on the offensive, and you want to be making sure that you've got a first sacrificial wave and a second follow-up wave. Okay. So anyway, I hope that video was useful. I know it seems like I could have said do 2 waves, end of video, but I wanted to go into a bit more depth, and I really wanted to hammer the point home. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below. What would be really cool is, for those of you that are well versed in the 3-wave tactic, what do you put in your first wave? What do you put in your second wave? What do you put in your fire support? How do you divvy it up? Do you go 33, 33, 33% in each wave? Or do you just have, often like I do, I only put about 20% into fire support and I put 80% into the attack. So, you know, how do you guys do the split, and how do you, what units do you put in each wave? You know, for me personally, when I'm doing it with Pure Infantry Guard, I have my choppy offensive squads of power swords, melters and flames in the first rank. In the second rank, I have my units which have got things like plasma guns and heavy bolters and autocannons. In the third rank, I've got foot veterans and I've got mortar teams and maybe some command squads with some heavy weapons. But that's my 3 waves, and I tend to put, you know, 100 infantry into the first wave, 100 infantry into the second wave, and then about, you know, between 40 and 50 in the third final sort of guard in the home field wave. That's how I like to try and do things. How do you guys do it? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.